Hello and welcome to Success Nation, first episode of the podcast. In this episode, I have with me Marty Cornish. He is an entrepreneur, athlete, and mental well-being advocate. Raised by overcoming significant challenges, Marty found direction in the Australian Army. He turned to endurance sports like marathons, qualifying for the Boston Marathon, inspired by personal struggles and silent battles faced by others. Marty founded Phoenix Workwear to promote mental health awareness. He balances his advocacy with entrepreneurship, scaling businesses through effective marketing strategies. So I'm glad to have Marty here with me on the episode, and we are going to be talking about how to basically build a business, bootstrapping that company, and it's going to be value packed with Marty. So Marty, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome to have you here, Marty, with me. So, first of all, because this is the Success Secret podcast, I want to hear from you throughout your journey in mental health and building business and bootstrapping that. What does success means to you, and how do you see other people around you have certain misconceptions around it?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I was a younger entrepreneur, and I haven't come from much. I come from very little in Australia, raised by a single mother. My father wasn't in the picture, so my view of success was always to get out of survival and build an affluent lifestyle where I, have lots of food, have a nice car, a good family, lots of money. And then when I finally found a little bit of success, things like ego can get in a way where you go and buy designer things, Louis Vuitton, and you feel like success is what you wear and how much money you make and validated on what other people's perception is of you. But now I view success, it's a more of a holistic approach. It's more, I really do believe in abundance. Obviously, we live in a world where we need money to pay for things, to keep uh, a roof over our head. But it's also, I believe, having inner peace. Because if you've got all the money in the world, but you don't have peace of mind, and you've got a lot of internal conflict, the money really doesn't mean anything. And then also, if you look at a billionaire that's say 70 years of age, if you ask him what he values most, it would be time because he can't buy back time. He would do anything to trade in a couple of his $1 billion if he could get an extra 20 years. So to me, success now it's having a great company where you're making lots of money, something with purpose, something that lifts you up spiritually, that you've got your health and your peace of mind that you can move forward in a positive way to the community.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a good combination in general because eventually, when you have a good company, good purpose for the business, and the community around you, generally speaking, money would come by itself, I guess, because people would want to participate or join or see or what you sell and these type of things. So now building your business and bootstrapping. And when we talk about bootstrapping a company, like it's basically a company that did not get funding from other outside investors, right? So that's basically the idea. So where did the idea for your business first of all came from? Where did you get that idea to build that business?
Well, my first company came from, well, I was working in advertising and I was dealing with some really cool brands, managing some really cool brands. And these brands were clothing brands and lifestyle brands. And the founders had really cool lifestyles. They'd be traveling to America, they'd be doing photo shoots with models. It seemed like the dream job. So I naturally got into apparel because it's a kind of a low entry in terms you don't need a lot of money to print 20 shirts to get started. But the problem with that is that everyone wants to own a clothing brand because it's a low barrier to entry. So I kind of fell into clothing, but I was actually just thinking about it in the car. It's not something I would particularly recommend moving forward. And a lot of private equity and a lot of investors don't really like apparel brands if you do want to exit in the future.
Mm, definitely. So, so now, like, what are the things that you basically focused on to build this business? Like, what are the most important things that you saw that are important? Because you mentioned, generally speaking, now building a clothing brand, let's say it's could be easier entry. Like we see a lot of those print on demand business.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of stuff while you are sitting at home, which is basically easier entry. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who are doing that on multiple websites, on Amazon and their own websites, different things. So how do you think about the competition yourself? And what are the things that you focused on to see this business thrive?
Yeah, like even as you're saying about all the print on demand on Amazon, it makes me feel queasy. I'm just like, it's just such a red blood market and just stuff that I'm not, just a competition. There's nothing wrong with competition because it generally means there's money there. But if you don't have a unique selling proposition and if you don't have a brand, if you're just competing on design, it's so easy for someone to just copy you. As soon as they know there's a bit of traction there, there's nothing to say that person can't go to a designer on Fiverr or a VA and go, just copy this. And then, and then you could, if you see it selling on Amazon, you can just copy that design and then launch Facebook ads or Instagram ads. So we're all about building brand, community, having a very clear, unique selling proposition. Like if I say to you, what problem does your brand solve? And then we look at, well, okay, so if that's the problem you're solving, how big is that total addressable market, the TAM? Because we want to make sure there's scale in there. That, otherwise you're always going to be limited to growth. So the most valuable thing in that exercise is product market fit. And do people actually want what you're selling? Is there naturally demand, or are you actually going off your gut feeling? Because that's where I've made mistakes. If you're using your gut instinct, or have you actually got proven evidence and data that there's demand for that product?
That's very important. Like you mentioned, a lot of people talk about design, which is basically when we talk about design, we are talking here about one product alone, like building a business based on one product. It's completely different from building what you're mentioning here, building a brand and a community around it and solving a problem for the people and the community around that brand, which is like focusing on one, let's say, design or one t-shirt or one whatever. It could hit this, but you cannot build maybe a business around it if you only have that idea, maybe. But if you
Yeah,
have,
well, if you
yeah, if you have the brand in mind and what that brand solves for people, it's a different ball game, right?
Yeah, and the story that's around the brand, like what's the story? Did the founder go through something, a personal experience, say with example of mental health or mental well-being? So he had this own problem himself. So he created this. So all of a sudden we've got this narrative and this story about the founder's connection to the brand, the problem it solves, and then you build a community and then repeat business. Because if you're just selling a design on Amazon, Amazon's going to take, excuse me, Amazon's going to take a nice clip of the percentages of the profit. And then once that design stopped trending, then how are you going to go get your next customers?
Mm.
You're constantly at the mercy of Amazon or Facebook to grow. And what happens if you can't come up with a second design that people like?
That's very important, right? So now it's so basically it's very important to see, not work on, let's say, gut feeling. What you mentioned, it's important to see what the market is about, and the community around you is also important. And also, but at the same time, how do you think that the most important things that we should focus on other than the design itself for, let's say, uh, that kind of a brand? Like, what is it that we should focus on? Like, do you think a lot of people talk about, because there are a lot of things that basically there, the materials, the way it's done, is it indoor or outsourced? A lot of things. So, what is the thing that are going to make this business or this brand completely unique to other people? I would say this brand, I do want to be associated to it, especially it's kind of a new one, right? So it's if it's compared to other brands, it's not old, it's new. So how would you portray a brand, a new brand, so would people see it as something that is trustworthy and authentic?
Yeah. So like, for example, if we use a gym brand, for example, there's a million gym brands out there. You made a good point about the fabric. So let's just say, for example, we're going to start a gym brand, but we're going to do a gym brand that's focused on mental health. So all of a sudden, we've got a little bit of a unique selling proposition now. And then if we go, okay, we're doing this because of mental health, because the founder suffered with mental health for 10 years, and now he's overcome all of that. And what we're going to do with our gym products, with our gym shorts, we're using a unique fabric blend that's never been used before. But this is taking under the assumption that the founder is into the gym, that he wears gym shorts. So I would like to assume that he's actually passionate or she's actually passionate about the product. So all of a sudden now we've got a unique selling proposition where we're here to break the stigma around mental health. We've got the founder's story connected to the mental health because he or she's gone through that journey. Plus, we're using a unique blend of fabric that we've tested ourselves that doesn't stop. It stops chafing when squatting. As an example, it stops chafing. So all of a sudden now we're coming up with these different marketing hooks and angles to make us stand out in this saturated market.
Hmm.
But I would create one prototype and then test that to see if people actually want. And then I'd actually go get people to try it on, get feedback before you go order that 100 shorts. That's my point there is you can't just go, oh my God, I love this gym brand that I've created in my head and I know everyone's going to love it. And then you buy the 100 shorts, $3,000, and then you launch and no one buys anything. It's soul destroying. So,
Yeah, so you mentioned two important things like the story or the personal story, which I assume it's important also for you to integrate within the brand, right? You think it's important to integrate it with the business brand. And also you mentioned testing basically. So if someone
mm,
like if I am kind of a maybe new starting out, how would I reach out to people? I don't have, for example, money for ads or whatever to test it. Who would
yeah,
who would want to test my product? Like how would you get the people to test it? Should they give it to family and friends, close ones? Like this way it could be a good way to test things out. Or is there a way to get some strangers, let's say, and turn them into kind of a tester, a beta testers, let's say, for the products?
yeah, that's a good question. I recommend never using friends or family from personal experience because they love you and they like you. You would think they don't want to hurt your feelings, so they're gonna. It's honestly the worst to use in a testing exercise. It's well, a lot of big brands they'll have like a private room where they'll get strangers in to test, and then they have the room blocked off so then the people can give honest, critical feedback without hurting anyone's feelings. And that's but to answer your question, if the founder's naturally interested in the community, let's go back to if we talk about the gym, we would assume that he or she likes going to the gym. So then I would go up to people in the gym, not in a weird way, but like, go up and get to know them and go, hey, I've seen you training here a little bit. I'm launching this new brand and I would love to get your feedback, if you wouldn't mind training with a singlet on. And, please give me honest, critical feedback. You're not going to hurt my feelings. You're actually going to do me a disfavor by not being honest to me. Because if it's not good and I use my money and no one buys it, the business won't work. So, and I would look for people who are already wearing that product in the gym. So you're not going to someone who isn't naturally wearing that product. And then you can kind of see that fit and then start getting that feedback from them and then taking some photos of them wearing it as well with their permission. So then you're getting a bit of content as well to start posting on your socials.
That's good because like it is like kind of for example the same target market. You want to be as close as possible to the people who are interested in kind of what you are portraying the brand about. So that's very important. Like if we are talking about health and these type of things, it's good to start with people who are in general interested in that area instead of just walking out to maybe a different store that's maybe about general clothing for example, which is might not be the best idea there, right?
Yeah, that's a great you know you really need to be close to your community and consumer because going back to the gym singlet, let's say that we think the problem is um let's just say for example we think that he doesn't like chafing or she doesn't like chafing, but when they try to single it on, the real problem we're solving isn't the chafing. It could be that they don't like tight singlets. Do you know what I mean? So, but you're not going to learn those insights unless you're actually speaking to your avatar, your target market. And that's where if you're just constantly doing everything behind a computer and you're not actually, or even if you're not having Zoom calls, you know, you need to actually have those conversations to get the insights.
Definitely. You mentioned something very important, like it's good to enter whether even if it's a local business like a brick and mortar, I would say the general idea, or if it's an online shop only, for example, it's a good idea to actually see people like physically face to face and not just keep it online, even if it's an online store, which is like very important. You will get a real feedback with real humans like in real time, which is very important for any business. Like you don't wanna also start messaging people all around on online, and maybe uh, I did it, but I failed at it. To be honest, I used to do it, and what I have used, I used to call like influencers in music and guitarists and this type of people because my brand was about kind of a music and this type of things, but it did not like worked as much as I thought it would be. So eventually it was like shut down, shut off. It wasn't a good way because eventually it is like what you we mentioned about it was about the one design, like it was a one design, even if it hit, even if you made some money from it, if you don't have some kind of a building blocks for the whole thing, I would say you would not have a different design that you would sell for yourself. Like looking at different designs and copying or having some kind of a similar of something that is already there, that's not that's not unique. Like eventually it will come to a halt, right?
Yeah, just to that point, well, there's a couple points there, like you with your music. See, to me, what comes to mind, because I've also done that, I can relate with gifting, with influencers offering gifts, and you know, it's a grind. But I work with a famous athlete, and I'm helping him build out his online coaching, his online education assets, and he knows a lot of people. And I know, for example, let's just say I've tried to contact some of his friends that I didn't know he knew. They would never respond to me, but he can literally just send a message to them and they respond straight away because he's met them in person. He's got their relationship. They respect him because of what he's accomplished. His doors open for him like I've never seen anyone get open to before. So, but you can't build those relationships when you're really online. You know, it takes going to events in the community. It takes going to the seminars or the, you know, the functions where your community is. Because you might be at the bar and then you meet the CEO of one of the big brands, and it's these weird non-planned moments where doors can get open,
Mm.
and you're not going to get that just by copying designs and not really caring about the community. But on the contrary to that, I'm a big believer in seeing what's working. Like if you see a design on Amazon that's trending and working well, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from that, but then going, well, how can we put our spin on it? How can we improve it? How can we make it better?
Mm. Definitely.
That's a smart strategy to do that. You know, I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying you need to have a community and, you know, to build that with it.
Yeah, and important to put your own spin on it, which should show in the product, right, or the service that the business provide. So building this type of business that you have did, it took, I'm sure it took a lot of patience, maybe resilience. So where do you get your, for example, I would say maybe motivation from to keep going with this?
Yeah, it's my friend said to me yesterday, he goes, I don't know how you've managed to do it for so long, the highs, the lows, I'm coming up to 10 years of business. I really believe that it's intrinsic. You've really got to want it. You know, if you don't want it at a deep level, I don't think it will ever work. You've got to have that self motivation that because there's a lot of days you're not going to feel like it. Not giving up and not quitting needs to mean more to you than anything. Because
Definitely.
I honestly don't believe, looking back, I love business. I could never do anything else. Like I'm obsessed with it. It's like a sport to me, and I just am passionate about it. But if I didn't have that passion, I don't think it would be worth the stress. I think it would be worth going and getting a job where you can get 200 grand a year or 150 and have your weekends off, work a night, maybe work 45 hours a week, 50 hours a week if you want. And you don't have to deal with all the bad stuff with business. And but I feel like that's the hard question we need to ask young entrepreneurs um, with that. But if you want it bad enough, I feel like that's where you've got to really want it.
Definitely. You have to persevere. Sometimes things are not easy. So you have to be a little bit patient and drive forward. That's very important. So in regards to that point, what is the, let's say, maybe the worst advice that you have ever received throughout your business?
Oh, there's been a lot, but I think it's taking advice from friends about what they think about your designs. What I feel like you've got to really cut out that kind of noise. And once you get really clear on, okay, this is the vision of the company I would like to build. This is where I want to be in 5 years. This is the mission. This is the problem that we solve. And this is the market size. And these are my core values as a person. One could be, for example, persistence or resilience, or I never give up. Once you get that, it really once you get clear on who you are and what your company's about, getting feedback from your friends and your family and all that, it's just a lot of noise I've found in my experience.
Mm.
And that's where really going out and speaking to your customer and going out and getting feedback from the market and your community, that's where it's really at. Because I just feel like everyone's always got an opinion in our early days and I think it's the question to ask is who opinion do I value a lot? Are they where I want to be? Do they have the experience because you already know the vision of your company, you know your community. Has the person had success in this industry? If not, then really it's just noise or, somewhat of an opinion.
Mm, definitely. So, what tools or resources or books would you generally recommend to people in general or in regards to business?
In business, I feel like Ray Dalio's book on business is The Principles is like a really good set in stone. Once you get the fundamentals, or there's another one by I think it's Steve Schwartzman, the called What It Takes by one of the big billionaire hedge funds. They just really break down what it really takes to build a big company and the way they think. It's at a different level. Like it's not this print on demand, it's really proper business. And then for adversity and for Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. I read that in a very tough time. and it really inspired me to lean into obstacles.
Awesome. That's great resources, Marty. Well, where can people learn more about you, see what you do, and be able to contact you?
The best place to is to follow me on Instagram at Marty underscore made status. That's MADESTATUS. Come in there, send me a DM, and connect with me there, or on LinkedIn as Marty Cornish. Just Marty
Awesome.
Cornish.
Thank
You
you,
should be able to
Marty.
find me.
Thank you very much, Marty, for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Really insightful and great thoughts into things like a business should be around purpose, community, and just not be. It's a good idea maybe to start with one product, maybe, but you should have a bigger view of things and test things out, which is very important, and take action toward it. Even if it's only, for example, an online business, you should take action even in the real world outdoors with the community around you and the people around you who are interested in what your vision is. So thank you very much for joining me.
No worries. Thanks for having me.